Yo, party people. Okay, December 16th, number 3. Okay, so we're in Ezra chapter 4. So the people have come back. They've already started worshiping. So those of you that don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, if you haven't seen the first videos, go back and watch the first videos. We're here on the timeline. We're right here. So the Northern Kingdom has fallen back here. Southern Kingdom has fallen here. They were both intermixed. The king of Assyria brought people in here, and he took people out of here. So there's been a mixture of people here, and so there's been a loss of somewhat of their identity here. Those that were in exile by Babylon, the Babylonian kingdom is taken over by Persia. King Cyrus, as we saw in our study of Isaiah, he's called out by name and prophesied that he will be responsible for bringing the people back to Jerusalem. And in fact, we see that here. So we're in the book of Ezra right here. Zerubbabel is the king, or he's of the Davidic line, and he's not functioning as a king because he can't. They're under Persian rule domination. But Cyrus the king sends him and the people back to rebuild the temple. Now the people are back there, and the Samaritans, we see in John chapter 4 when Jesus comes into contact with the Samaritan woman, how the Jewish people, the Jewish leaders are totally appalled by this. They don't have anything to do with the Samaritans. That animosity is traced all the way back here to Ezra chapter 4. When the people have come back to the temple to try and rebuild the temple, you see the Samaritans and the people that are around them try to do everything they can to stop them, even though they've been told by the king of Persia, who they're under as well, to do this, right? So right now we left off in chapter 4 where the people were saying, let us help you build. Let us help you build. And the Jewish people that have come back are like, I don't think so, homie. And so then they try to get out of it by saying, Cyrus gave us this permission. I'm so sorry. We appreciate the idea, but we can't have you help us because we have been told to do this, right? And then here's the paper. Here's the paper. We can't have you help us. We've got to do this. So then it says, so you may do not. So this is their response to the Samaritans that are trying to, that are starting to harass them and wanting to supposedly help them. Now these are their enemies. These are not their friends. You may do nothing with us to build a house for our God, but we alone will build to the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us. Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. So this is the Samaritans, the surrounding people. They troubled them in building and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. So what the study Bible and the commentary said is that when it says they hired counselors against them, okay, so this is, again, there's nothing new under the sun, right? They're saying that this is likely legal, like attorneys that they would send to the Persian court all the way over to Persia to bring charges against the people in Jerusalem, which meant that the people in Jerusalem would have had to send people back to Persia to represent them against these false charges. So they were utilizing not only local harassment to try and get them to stop building, but then they were using lawfare to try and get them to stop building by making up charges and sending people to the Persian king, right, to make things up, and then the people of Jerusalem would have to represent themselves. And so they says that they did this all the way through Cyrus, king of Persia, even who was the guy who originally sent them back, and then even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And so then it says, in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Now, what's interesting is Ahasuerus is also known as Xerxes, Xerxes, and this is the king that you see in the book of Esther. So those of you that are familiar with the book of Esther, which is an awesome story, you see how all these things in the Bible are interconnected, right? And so so it says that the letter that they send to him doesn't go anywhere, doesn't do anything, and then they send another letter to his son Artaxerxes, and nothing happens with that. We're going to see that here in a second. But this is the first letter that they send. So in the reign of Ahasuerus, which is the same guy from Esther, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. In the days of Artaxerxes also, Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabel, and the rest of their companions wrote to Artaxerxes, king of Persia. So those are the locals. Those are the Samaritans. And the letter was written in Aramaic script and translated into the Aramaic language. Rehum, the commander, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem. So Rehum and Shimshai are the local Persian representatives. So those are the local guys representing, so like an embassy or something. That, if you kind of put that in your head, thinking of it like that. So the first letter was from the local people, leaders, and then of course they're in on it with because they live there. So there's what do you call it, like they're working together. The guys representing Persia in the Persian embassy like place also wrote a letter. And so this is the letter. So from Rehum the commander, Shimshai the scribe, and the rest of their companions. So those are Rehum and Shimshai are the official Persian representatives, and the rest of their companions are the locals, right? Representatives of the Dinites and the Arpachshakites and the Tarpalites and the people of Persia and Erech and Babylon and Shushan, the Deavites and the Elamites and the rest of the nations whom the great and noble O-Snapper, love that name. O-Snapper was an Assyrian king. And the rest of the nations whom the great and noble O-Snapper took captive and settled in the cities of Samaria, and the remainder beyond the river, that's Euphrates, and so forth. Okay, so he's saying this is who's coming, this is who's writing this letter. Your people here in your local ambassador place, and then all of these people. So it's not just me or him or a couple people, it's all these people that are writing this letter and making this complaint to you. And so this is a copy of the letter that they sent to him. This is what it says in parentheses. To King Artaxerxes, from your servants, the men of the region beyond the river, that's the Euphrates, and so forth. Let it be known to the king that the Jews who came up from you have come to us at Jerusalem and are building the rebellious and evil city and are finishing its walls and repairing the foundations. Let it now be known to the king that if this city is built and the walls completed, they will not pay tax, tribute, or custom, and the king's treasury will be diminished. Now, because we received support from the palace, it was not proper for us to see the king's dishonor. Therefore, we have sent and informed the king that search may be made in the book of the records of your fathers, and you will find in the book of the records and know that this city is a rebellious city, harmful to kings and provinces, and that they have incited sedition within the city in former times, for which this city was destroyed. We informed the king that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, the result will be that you will have no dominion beyond the river. The king, so what he's talking about there about this, there's some truth to what they're saying, right? So these are the kings that rebelled under Babylon, or the original Assyrian and Babylon, or the Eliakim, also known as Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah. Right, so this was in our study of 2 Chronicles. So those things are true. They did rebel. They didn't want to come under they wanted their autonomy. They were their own separate nation. And so that's what this guy is sending him. So here's the king's answers. The king sent an answer. So to Rehum the commander, to Shimshai the scribe, and to the rest of their companions who dwell in Samaria, and to the remainder beyond the river, peace and so forth. The letter which you sent to us has been clearly read before me, and I gave the command, and a search has been made, and it was found that this city in former times has revolted against kings, and rebellion and sedition have been fostered in it. There have also been mighty kings over Jerusalem who have ruled over all the region beyond the river, and tax and tribute and custom were paid to them. Now give the command to make these men cease, that this city may not be built until the command is given by me. Take heed now that you do not fail to do this. Why should damage increase to the hurt of the kings? Okay, so that was his answer back. Now this, though, was not the king that they sent it to. I believe it was the king's son. So nothing happened with the first one, but it was like his son that responded. Now when the copy of King Artaxerxes' letter was read before Rehum, Shimshai the scribe, and their companions, they went up in haste to Jerusalem against the Jews, and by force of arms made them cease. Thus the work of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem, ceased, and it was discontinued until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. All right, so we have the ending of chapter 3-4. So you see here the ancient animosity. So you see them going back, just to clarify, just one last time before we close out. So this is them here in the beginning of the restoration of Zerubbabel. There's 3 different times that they send people back. This is the first time that they go back, right, to begin the wall. And as soon as they go back, of course, Lucifer doesn't like that. So he's stirring up the people around him. And you see that it was the groups, they're Samaritans. They're from Samaria, and they're mixed Jew with other nations. And so you see that ancient animosity that we saw in John. All right, so that's all I had for you. Remember, Jesus Christ is Lord. He's the only way to the Father, right? All you have to do is say, Jesus, I give my life to you, and you're in, right? Then seek him, read your Bible. Jesus is coming. Peace.